The motherboard I'm using is a Super Socket 7 board from DFI. I'm using a stock standard Intel Pentium running at 133 MHz. Because the board is well documented, it's very easy to find out the correct settings for the jumpers and dip switches. For sound, I'm going with a Sound Blaster AWE64 Gold. I use two wires to connect the PC speaker output of the motherboard with the sound card. There are plenty of options for choosing a graphics card. I'm going with our Nvidia TNT2 M64 because they're very compatible with DOS games, easy to find and cost next to nothing. At this point I turn on the PC and check that everything works and that the processor is detected correctly. I continue by adding storage with a 10 GB drive, a CD-DVD drive, as well as the Gotek floppy emulator. The Pentium 133 runs newer DOS games such as Doom 2 very well, but the machine is fast enough for more demanding games such as Wing Commander 3 or System Shock, which run at a higher resolution. Games such as Wing Commander or Test Drive 3, however, run way too fast. To turn the machine into a 386, we access the BIOS and disable both the processor cache as well as the motherboard cache. Now Wing Commander and Test Drive 3 will run just fine. To turn the machine into a 486, we disable only the processor cache, but leave the motherboard cache enabled. This is a great setting for games that run too slow on a 386, but too fast on a Pentium. Theme Park is such a game. Okay everyone, so here we are on the 3-in-1 DOS Retro gaming PC, and the way I'm shooting this video is I've got the Gotek floppy emulator here, so you can see how I'm switching between all my disks. I've got around 40 various disks on here, and I wrote them down because otherwise you forget what is on what disk. And we're going to start with the basics. I've cleared the BIOS, so you're getting this error, CMOS check some error defaults loaded, and that's what you want to see. We can also see that it picks up the hard drive and the optical disk drive. So we've got two options: either go F1 to continue with the boot process, or press delete to enter the setup, which we're going to do. So we just press the delete button. And the reason I'm doing this a bit more in detail is I had a lot of viewers ask me to show them how I set up the BIOS and how I install MS-DOS, but without leaving anything out, like showing them the whole thing. So here we are in the BIOS, and the first thing I do is load the BIOS defaults. And you have two choices. You can go with the failsafe. These are really slow, but they usually always work. And then you might have something that says load optimal settings, or something that says load turbo settings, and I usually go for these. The next thing I do is change my time. So every time you clear the CMOS or you remove the battery, you have to set the date and the time. So we are in April, and let me just turn on my phone. That's the 15th. And what's the time? 19:59. Alrighty, we'll leave everything the way it is. And you might be surprised, but there's not much you have to change in the BIOS. Under the BIOS feature setup, there's not much, really there's nothing we have to change. Important is the boot sequence. We will boot from the floppy disk to install MS-DOS. So we want to have the A drive boot before the C drive. That's really quite important. Under chipset features, this is where you can change things that affect performance but also compatibility. If you don't have any issues, you don't need to change anything here. And look, some of you are into tweaking and getting more performance out of this machine. Look, this is a retro DOS gaming PC. Having slow speed or average performance is actually really good. You want something that works and is reliable. It doesn't have to be super fast. If you need more speed, just build a Pentium 2 and you've got your speed. Power management setup, again, there's nothing here to change. The plug and play option, I will change that to manual because we're dealing with MS-DOS, which is not a plug and play operating system. Then, very important, that's probably the area where I change the most in the integrated peripherals. I turn off the serial and the parallel port. That frees up a few resources and also disable the USB controller. There's no need for that under DOS. And then I run the hard drive auto detection. It picks up the 10 gigabyte secret drive, and there are a couple of options, and we get the Y here. So you just press Y to go with option number 2, and you can see that it now configured those settings. It just speeds up the boot process a little bit. And that's it, it's all saved, and now save and exit. And what we're going to do next is we're going to load a MS-DOS 6.22 boot disk. It's the installation disk, so I have to switch over to floppy number 18. That's the disk number 1 of the MS-DOS 6.22 installation disks. There are 3 of them. So we're just going to boot off that, and we're going to partition the hard drive using fdisk and then format the hard drive. Whenever you're booting from an MS-DOS boot disk, if you press F5 when you see booting MS-DOS, you can skip loading the config files. So just press F5 now, and it bypasses configsys and autoexec batch file. That just speeds up the boot process. And then we run fdisk. Fdisk is the tool to partition our hard drives. I usually go into option number 4, display partition information. And we can see we've got a primary partition and extended partition. Now, I've created this before, so let's say we want to start clean, and we're going to remove all of them. So I'm just going to press escape, and I'll go delete. And with 2 options that are of interest to us, delete primary partition and delete extended partition. If you've got a non-partition, you have to use option 4. And we also need to do delete logical DOS drives in the extended partition. So we have to work our way backwards. 3, 2, and then 1. So let's go with option 3. And here we just gotta type in the drive letters one by one. So that removed D. Do the same thing for E. And we do one more for F. Okay, so now all the logical drives in the extended partition have been deleted. We still need to delete the actual extended partition, so we go number 3 again. Delete extended partition. There's 1, so we say yes. And that extended partition is gone, and the only thing that's left is the primary partition, so we go escape again. Now, number 3, delete partition, delete primary partition. There it is. 1, press enter, yes. Press escape. And if you go option 4 now, display partition information, we can see there is nothing there anymore. Okay, now we create our first partition. MS-DOS supports up to 8 gigabytes, and it can only use 8 gigabytes by dividing it into 4 2 gigabyte partitions. So we create a primary partition, option number 1, primary partition. At this point, you just have to wait. It thinks a little bit and works with the hard drive. There we go. Say yes to this prompt. There you go, and it's going to reboot the machine. Alrighty, we're back, so we run fdisk again, and now we're going to create our remaining 3 partitions. So we go create DOS partition. We already have a. Let me just go back out, I'll actually show you. So we can see the primary partition, and it's using 25%. So we have 75% of our 8 gigabytes remaining. So we go create DOS partition, and now we choose option number 2, extended partition. There you go. Just press enter, it chooses the maximum capacity. And there you go. Now you press escape, and it will actually tell you there are no logical drives defined. So just press escape one more time, and now we can assign the logical DOS drives, and it does that one by one. press escape, choose number 4, and now that's what our partition table looks like. We've got our primary partition, we've got the extended partition, and within the extended partition we've got 3 logical drives, D, E and F. Okay, we're all done. We're going to reboot the machine one more time. Okay, we're back in DOS, and now what we're going to do is format our full partition. So we just go format C:. Alrighty, we give this driver name. I'm just going to call that one MS-DOS. And we're going to format the next drive. We're going to call this one 386. We format the next one. We're going to call that one 486, and we format the last one F. And we're going to call that one Pentium. And there you go. Now we created all 4 partitions and formatted them. Okay, now we can install MS-DOS. So I'm just configuring the GoTech with the first MS-DOS disk. There are 3, and the first one is a boot floppy disk. Okay, here we just press enter, and once more, and again, and that's it. So we're just going to fast forward the video because this is going to take a while. Okay, and now we remove the floppy and press enter to restart the machine. There you go, so that's working fine. Now, in case that your machine does not boot at this point, and that is quite a common issue, especially if you're using a factory new SD card or compact flash card, if that's the case, insert the boot floppy again, and I'm just gonna switch it back to the first DOS boot disk, which is on 18. So boot from that floppy again, and then I'm just pretending we've just booted up, and then run fdisk/mbr, and that will rewrite the master boot record. It's a common issue. I had to do this with every single factory new SD card or compact flash card, but it might even be happening with hard drive. So that's just just a tip to be aware of. At this point that MS-DOS is now booting from the hard drive, you might as well go back into the BIOS and change the boot order so it doesn't keep looking for the floppy drive. So just set it to C only, and that will make sure that it only boots from the hard drive. Okay, we've got a working MS-DOS, and the next step is very straightforward if you just use my MS-DOS starter pack, but otherwise it can be quite messy and lots of little steps, and that has to do with the driver for the mouse as well as the optical drive, but also for all the memory options. Under MS-DOS, some games like conventional memory only, some games use XMS, some games use EMS memory. So I've put together a little boot menu that does all the heavy lifting for you. Now I have to switch to floppy number, it's on 38, my starter pack. I'll put a link to my website down below in the description where you can get all these files. And you basically want to copy the autoexec file, autoexec batch file onto the C drive, and that will overwrite the existing one. So absolutely say yes to that one. And you also want to copy the config file, config.sys file, and also overwrite the existing one. And then the other thing we need is copy the drivers. So There are two drivers, one for the mouse and one for the optical drive. And we're gonna create a folder. MD is for make directory. So we're gonna create a drivers folder. You can see it here, the drivers. And we're gonna copy those files across. So we go copy asterisk dot asterisk c/drivers. So let's have a look if they've successfully copied across. There they are. And now we're just gonna reboot our machine, and we should have a boot menu, working mouse, and also a working optical drive. There you go. There's the boot menu. So quite a lot of options. If you actually don't need the CD-ROM drive, you can just skip those the first three options and just go for these two: expanded memory with mouse, extended memory with mouse, and conventional memory with mouse. And if you don't even need a mouse, you can just go with one of these. So I'm just going to use this option, and it's going to load the mouse. So let's type in edit and see if we got the working mouse. So that's fine. So the mouse I'm using, it's a Logitech MX518. It's quite a new USB mouse with one of those green USB to PS2 mouse dongles, and it's an optical mouse, so it's very smooth and responsive, excellent to work with. So I'm just going to reboot the machine one more time, and I'll show you that the CD-ROM driver also works. So we're just going to go with the first menu. So it's loading the CD driver, and note it's getting the drive letter G, because we have 4 partitions, 4 drive letters already used for the hard drives. Okay, so the next step is to install the Sound Blaster driver. Once again, I use my floppy for the GoTech, and there are 2 disks we need to install. The first disk is the CTCM, that's the plug and play manager. I've got that on 42, so I'm just gonna flick to that. And we go to the floppy drive and we run install. So the CTCM is basically the plug and play manager. DOS is not a plug and play aware operating system, so we need to use this configuration manager to configure the resources. So this takes care of what address and what interrupt the Sound Blaster will use. So here we just press enter. We don't have any windows, so everything we just leave it as default. Press enter, and it's gonna copy some files. Now if you've disabled some of the resources like the serial port and the parallel port, you should not have any issues at this stage. If you are using other cards like a networking card, or I don't know, a second sound card or something exotic, then you might run into a conflict, and CTCM will use non-standard settings, and you want to avoid that. You want to stick with the standard Sound Blaster resources for all the games to work, and they're basically 220 for the address, interrupt either 5 or 7. 5 works for most games. Some games want interrupt on 7, and I'll show you later how to change that. DMA should be 1 and high DMA should be 5. The MIDI port should be on 330. And we get a screen later, and hopefully we'll see all the default configurations and there are no issues. Okay, so it's updating some files, so we just press enter. And press enter here. So now it's actually running the configuration manager. And now we just do a reboot, F10. Okay, so CTCM is running, that was the first step. Second step, we now need the Sound Blaster basic disk. I've got that on floppy ID 39, so I'm just gonna move to that. And that will install the actual drivers. So it's important that you install the CTCM first. I will put both the files for both floppy disks on my website already extracted, unpacked, so you just copy them onto a floppy drive and you're good to go. Okay, so here we press enter one more time. here we go. We got the resources 223, 330, 5, 1 and 5. So that's perfect. We're just going to go ahead with that, and it's going to copy all the files across. Now there's more to come. Once this is finished, I'm going to show you how to change resources. I'm going to show you especially how to change the interrupt from 5 to 7. That is quite important for some games. Not really just a handful, but some old games want the Sound Blaster on interrupt 7 and won't detect it otherwise. So best to put it on interrupt 7. The other thing I'm going to show you in this video, I'm not going to use any external MIDI devices. You can certainly use them, and I've used the Roland Sound Canvas MT32 and external wavetable board adapters in all sorts of other videos. But in this video I want to keep it simple. But I will enable chorus and reverb, which will kind of give the FM chip on the AW64 a little bit of a boost. And we're also going to enable a 3D expansion, 3D stereo expansion technology, which just basically is like a post-processing effect and just makes it sound a little bit richer. So a lot of people don't like the non-Yamaha Opel 3 chip on the AW64, but I'm a little bit fond of it because it sounds unique, and with chorus and reverb and the stereo expansion, it actually sounds quite unique and in my opinion better and more sophisticated. But of course, look, it's very subjective, so I'm just showing you another way of doing things. Okay, here we go, that's all ready to go. Press enter. It's just updating some of our startup files, and we press F10 and do a reboot. Alrighty, that should be good to go. Now we're just going to go into the Sound Blaster 16 folder and we run diagnose. This will give the sound card a proper check and make sure that everything works. So for example, we can check the memory on the Sound Blaster, make sure that the memory works, but it also checks all the interrupts, the DMA, the addresses and so on. And at the end, you can play some sample sound effects in 8-bit and 16-bit, but also some music in with the FM synthesizer as well as with the AWE. So I do recommend that you run this just to make sure that everything is actually working as it should. So now it's checking all the other resources. The MIDI port on 330, the interrupt on 5, DMA on 1, high DMA on 5. And that, okay, now we can
8-bit testing.
We can check out all these options.
16-bit testing.
Okay, that's all working. And we've got two options now, quit or update system settings. We haven't really changed anything, so we're just gonna quit. Okay, and what I'm gonna show you next is we're running mixer set. So there's more stuff to tweak. The mixer, and we can use the mouse here. And basically, under here, you want to turn off anything you don't use. For example, we're not going to use a line in. We will be using the CD input for listening to CD audio tracks. However, if you don't do that, this might be picking up a little bit of noise. So you might actually want to mute this. I'm also going to mute the microphone. I'm not going to mute the PC speaker because I've actually got the PC speaker routed through from the motherboard into the AW64. I will actually have to check that later. Over here we can untick all of them. This is just for recording, and this is for routing routing stuff through to the output, basically mixing it together with the other stuff. So you want to have the CD left and right ticked because you want the CD audio to go through the mixer and then out from the speakers, and that's it. And when you save that, those settings will get applied. And now I'm going to show you how to turn on the chorus and reverb and the 3D stereo expansion feature, but also how to create a batch file, because working with batch files is really straightforward. So awutil is the command, and at the moment it's telling us reverb and chorus is set to 0. Now we can do a /?, and it gives us a couple of options, and the command you need to run to initialize is /s, and then to set the reverb is /r:, and then a setting between 0 and 100. I'm gonna go with 30. And same with the chorus, and if you run that, you can now see that the reverb in the chorus is like set to 1/3. And to turn on the 3D stereo expansion, it is this program here, CT3D-SE, but it wants another command, which is on. Now it says creative 3D stereo enhancement is now enabled. So I'm going to show you how to create a batch file. We're going to create a batch file. I'm going to call it Sound Blaster Boost batch file. And first we got to go into the Sound Blaster 16 folder. Then we're going to run the awutil /s/reverb 30 /chorus 30. Then we're going to run the CT 3D stereo expansion with the on command, and then we go back to the root directory. So I'm just going to save that, and let's try it. Sound Blaster Boost, see if they are perfect. So now whenever you restart your computer and you want to turn on reverb and chorus, you just run that batch file. Okay, so now I'm just going to check that my speaker is actually routed through correctly. So on disk 43 I've got Xenon 2. So we're just going to give that a try.